The following is a darshan with His Divine Grace, H.D.Goswami Das Goswami Acharya Dev, on Lord Nityananda's Appearance Day, February 11th, 1987, in Miami Beach, Florida.
We'll read the purport to this song given by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This is a very nice song sung by Narottam Das Thakur. He advises that Nitai Pada, the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, Komola means lotus and Pada means feet, are a shelter where one will get the soothing moonlight not only of one, but of millions of moons. We can just imagine the aggregate total value of the soothing shine of millions of moons. In this material world, Jagat, which is progressing toward hell, there is always a blazing fire, and everyone is struggling hard without finding peace. Therefore, if the world wants to have real peace, it should take shelter under the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, which are cooling like the shining of a million moons. Jurai means relief. If one actually wants relief from the struggle of existence and actually wants to extinguish the blazing fire of material pangs, Narottam Das Thakur advises, please take shelter of Lord Nityananda. What will be the result of accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda? He says, Hano Nitai Bine Bhai. Unless one takes shelter under the shade of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, Radha Krishna Paite Nai, it will be very difficult for him to approach Radha Krishna. The aim of this Krishna consciousness movement is to enable us to approach Radha Krishna and associate with the Supreme Lord in His sublime pleasure dance. Narottam Das Thakur advises that if one actually wants to enter into the dancing party of Radha Krishna, he must accept the shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. Then he says, Se Sambandha Nahi. Sambandha means connection or contact. Anyone who has not contacted a relationship with Nityananda is understood to have spoiled his human birth. In another song also, Narottam Das says, Hari Hari Bifale Janama Goino. Anyone who does not approach Radha Krishna through a relationship with Nityananda has uselessly spoiled his life. Britha means useless. Janma means life. Tar means his. And Sambandha means relationship. Se Sambandha Nahi Jar. For whom there is no Sambandha. Britha Janmo Gilo Tar. His life, Gelo, Tar, his life passed uselessly. Britha Janmo Gelo Tar. Anyone who does not make a relationship with Nityananda is simply spoiling the boon of his human form of life. Why is he spoiling it? Se Pashu Baro Durachar. Se means that, Pashu means animal, and Durachar means misbehaved or the most misbehaved. Without elevation to Krishna consciousness through the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, life is simply spoiled in the animal propensities of sense gratification. Narottam Das says that ordinary animals can be tamed, but when a human being is animalistic, having only animal propensities, he is most horrible, for he cannot be tamed. Ordinary cats and dogs, or even a tiger, can be tamed, but when a human being goes out of his way and neglects to take to the human activity of Krishna consciousness, his higher intelligence will simply be misused for animal propensities. and it is very difficult to tame him. The enactment of state laws cannot make a thief an honest man, because his heart is polluted. He cannot be tamed. Every man sees that a person who commits criminal offenses is punished by the government, and also in scriptural injunctions punishment in hell is mentioned. But despite hearing from Scripture and seeing the action of the state laws, the demoniac cannot be tamed. What are they doing? Nitai na volilo mukhe. Since they do not know who is Nityananda, they never say the names of Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya. Majjilo sangsara sukhe. Majjila means becomes absorbed. They become absorbed in so-called material enjoyment. They don't care who Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda are, and therefore they go deep down into material existence. Vidya kule ki korive tar. If one has no connection with Nityananda, and if he does not come to Krishna consciousness, his vidya, or his so-called academic education, and kula, birth in a high family or great nation, will not protect him. Regardless of whether one is born in a very big family or nation, or has a very advanced academic education, at the time of death, nature's law will act. His work will be finished, and he will get another body according to that work. Why are these human animals acting in this way? Ahankare matto hoya nitai pada pasariya. They have become maddened by a false concept of bodily life, and thus they have forgotten their eternal relationship with Nityananda. Asatyere satya korimani. Such forgetful persons accept the illusory energy as factual. Asatyere refers to that which is not a fact, or in other words, maya. Maya means that which has no existence but is a temporary illusion only. Persons who have no contact with Nityananda accept this illusory body as factual. Narottam Das Thakur then says, Nitayer karuna hove braje radha krishna pave. If you actually want to approach the association of Radha Krishna, you must achieve the mercy of Lord Nityananda first. When he is merciful toward you, then you will be able to approach Radha Krishna. Dharo nitai charana dukhani. Narottam Das advises that one firmly catch the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. Then again he says, Nitai charana satya. One should not misunderstand and think that as he has caught hold of Maya, similarly the lotus feet of Nityananda may also be something like that Maya. In other words, I've tried in so many ways to find shelter. I have been cheated. Also, I have been a cheater. So this relationship may also be something like that. So one should not misunderstand and think that as he has caught hold of Maya, similarly the lotus feet of Nityananda may also be something like that Maya, or illusion. Therefore, Narottam Das confirms, Nitai charana satya. The lotus feet of Nityananda are not illusion. They are a fact. Tahar sevako nitya. And one who engages in the transcendental loving service of Nityananda is also transcendental. If one engages in the transcendental loving service of Nityananda in Krishna consciousness, he immediately achieves his transcendental position on the spiritual platform, which is eternal and blissful. Therefore he advises Nitai pada sada koroas. Always try to catch the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. Narottama varodukhi. Narottam Das Thakur, the Acharya, is taking the position that he is very unhappy. Actually, he is representing ourselves. He says, my dear Lord, I am very unhappy. Nitai more koro sukhi. Therefore, I am praying to Lord Nityananda to make me happy. Rakhoranga charaner pas. please keep me in a corner of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nityananda Mahaprabhu ki jai. Prabhupada always indicated to us that there is no material limitation. I was just rereading a letter from Prabhupada where he was saying, who is the fool who has said that because there will be a nuclear war, therefore there will be no more preaching, so why bother, or something like that. Prabhupada said there will always be book distribution, there will always be preaching. Prabhupada used to criticize the Americans. He used to say, you Americans and your material formulas. That used to be Prabhupada's common criticism, material formulas. In other words, that just to make a material analysis and then that's finished. That's the final word. Rather than actually believing in Krishna. So, as far as book distribution, there are different techniques, different approaches, and so on. But if we are determined to distribute books, then Krishna, as Prabhupada told us, not that we can claim that I can go and distribute books and Krishna will give me his mercy because I'm a great devotee, but rather on the strength of Prabhupada's statement. That's our confidence. We should not be confident thinking, yes, if I distribute books, Krishna must give me the results. Just like the karma mimamsaka philosophy, they feel if you just do your duty properly, the gods or God, they must give you the result. This was the philosophy. Karma mimamsaka, which was preached by Krishna to Nanda Maharaj. Don't worry about God. Don't worry about the gods. Just do your duty. They'll have to give the result. Because it's the laws of nature. So not with this idea. We should not be proud that if I go out to distribute books, then Krishna must give me the result. But rather humbly, with faith in the words of Prabhupada, that he said if you go out, Krishna will help you. So, now that's not going on. Practically all over the country. Not going on very much. And one thing I've noticed in preaching work in America, that despite good instruction, the devotees will tend to do what everyone else is doing. In other words, because others may not be distributing books or maybe doing certain things, so therefore devotees will also tend to do the same thing. So it's a little bit like swimming against the current sometimes. And even a philosophy has arisen to justify not doing books. But actually, that was Prabhupada's desire. So, I was just reading a letter to Kirtananda Swami, which Prabhupada wrote, instructing Kirtananda Swami also that books are the most important work. Apparently, in 1976 or something, New Vrindavan had distributed some books, and they'd sent the result, and Prabhupada wrote to New Vrindavan that for them also books are the most important work. So, in Nityananda's appearance day, so it shouldn't just be the usual bad news and good news we have on holy days, the bad news being we have to fast, and the good news being there's a feast at the end of it. So it would be nice if, in addition to singing the usual bhajans and fasting and taking a feast and horsing around on the beach or something, if in addition to the usual activities, we actually take it very seriously, take very, very seriously this day. take it very, very seriously, and think very deeply about direction we're going in. As far as I can see, my personal observation is that the greatest enemy of book distribution is sex desire. Sex desire, for many reasons. Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that Kama isha krodha isha rajo guna samudbhava mahasano mahapama vidyenam iha bhairinam. Vidyenam iha bhairinam. You know this verse. This verse was an answer to a question Arjuna asked. Ato kena prayukto yang papam charati purusha. Ata, Arjuna said, therefore, kena, by what? By what? Or because of what? Ata kena prayukto yang purusa. This living being, the conditioned soul, is engaged by what? What is it that is engaging him? So that he... What is engaging the living entity so that papam charati, he commits sin. He commits sin. Papam charati purusa. Anichanapi varshneya, even not desiring it. Anichan. Ichan means desiring. Anichan. Api. Even not desiring. In other words, he doesn't want to be sinful. Baladiva, as if by force. Bala means force. Baladiva, as if by force. Niyojita, he's forced to act. Baladiva, as if by force. So Arjuna said, Atha kena, by what? What is causing this to happen? Kena. Atha kena prayuktoyam. What is causing a living being to engage in sense gratification? To engage in sinful activities? And Lord Krishna's immediate response was Kamo Isha. It is this lust. Krodha Isha. And then it becomes this anger. In other words, we become lusty or desirous, and then if I don't get what I want, I become angry. I become irritated and angry, disgusted. I didn't get what I wanted. Kamo Isha, Krodha Isha, Rajoguna Samudra. This is a production of Rajogun. And Lord Krishna says, Mahashano. This is the all-devouring thing. Mahashano. Mahapatma, it is the great sin. This is the great sin. Just like in the Christian teachings, they have the concept of original sin. So similarly, Lord Krishna says, this is the great sin. This is the great sin that causes the fall down of the living being. Is lust, which is transformed into wrath. Vidyenam iha bhairinam. You should know, vidhi, tad vidhi, vidhi, you should know that this is the enemy in this world. This is the enemy. Similarly, Lord Krishna says, Avratam jnaname tena jnanino niti bhairina kamaru, that the living being's eternal or pure consciousness is covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and burns like fire. And then he says, Jahi Shatrung Mahavaho, conquer this enemy. Kamarupa Durasadam, this insurmountable lust. So there are at least 3 verses here. You'll find these verses at the end of the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. There are at least 3 verses where Lord Krishna says this lust is the enemy. This is the enemy. So if there's something that we want to correct, or we feel there's something wrong, we should immediately suspect this enemy, this lust, which manifests in different ways. Lust can manifest in the form of false pride. I won't cooperate with the leaders because of my false pride. This is also a symptom of lust. Or lust may manifest that actually if one is attached to sense gratification, in the sense of man, Prabhupada said, for man, woman is Maya, for woman, man is Maya. So if one becomes attached to this, he has to get his daily fix. Just like the heroin addicts. Every day they have to get their fix, isn't it? So when one is attached, every day he has to get his fix. I have to get so much juice. I have to speak to a woman. Or woman, I must get some attention from a man. I must get a daily fix every day. Otherwise, just like if someone doesn't get their heroin, they go crazy. So if I don't get my daily fix, if I don't get my daily injection of a little bit of sex pleasure, either subtle or gross, I have to get a little fix, then I can't function. So on this platform, it will be difficult. It will be difficult to have a taste for preaching Krishna consciousness. We will gradually become entangled in different types of material schemes. So this is the enemy, according to Lord Krishna. This is the enemy. So we found that just like there was a baby boom, then gradually the country started getting older. There's not so many babies, just older people, more conservative. So in the same way, if we don't preach, instead of seeing a baby boom, a bhakta boom in Krishna consciousness, gradually the average age of the devotees will get older, and their concerns will not be the Sankirtan party, but rather my family, my children, my businesses. These become the concerns, and of course it becomes a non-revolutionary religious society. We lose our revolutionary cutting edge, so to speak. That cutting edge becomes very dull, and the business is simply business. So that we can have, even in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement in America, just a few years after Prabhupada clearly told us that the main reason he even opened these temples is to distribute books, and we can have a situation where in a community with 60 or 70 people, 8 people will go out. So this is the result. This means that it is no longer, we are losing that revolutionary fervor. Our business is business. So, therefore I perceive, my personal observation is that the hope for this movement is that devotees will come forward to put aside their sense gratification or their personal comfort, and they will actually take up the task of going out to preach Krishna consciousness. That's actually required. So in that regard, Contact Sankirtan program is also very important. You're going out, Vainath? So devotees become involved in this program, and we have to preach very vigorously. We have to preach very vigorously. Actually, our book distribution result is, of course, very mediocre. We have to be honest. We can't just be a mutual flattery. What do they call it? A mutual admiration society. Yeah. So, anyway, somehow or other, now this Lord Nityananda's appearance day, I think we should think very seriously about this need to revive book distribution. You may know that the point is that somehow or other we have to distribute books somehow or other. This anyway, Lord Nityananda's appearance day, he personally used to go out on Sankirtan, so it's very nice that we're also going out today. He used to go out himself. One may think, well, should I go out on Sankirtan? Haven't I outgrown that? We may think that way. Haven't I outgrown Sankirtan? I mean, I used to do it when I was a kid, but haven't I outgrown that now? Of course, Panchagoda, you're going out, isn't it? Yes, Panchagoda is setting a good example. He's personally going out, doing Sankirtan. So, Nityananda is Vishnu Tattva. He was going out in Sankirtan. He is Vishnu Tattva. So anyway, we have to, it's not a question of saying, well, we have Gurukula, because even, it's been discovered now, I think, in Murli Vadaka, that even in the Gurukula, they take the children out, isn't it? They give them a taste for Sankirtan. I get letters from the children. The nicest, most Krishna conscious, most enthusiastic letters that I get from the children were when they go on in Sankirtan. It's actually their greatest pleasure. Even the children became very enlivened. You know about that program? Anyway, devotees have to think very seriously. Each individual has to think very seriously about what is his understanding, his or her understanding of Krishna consciousness. What was Prabhupada's desire? Am I actually being very serious about my spiritual life? Or am I what Prabhupada called an ease lover? We have a quite an impressive collection of ease lovers. Prabhupada called his godbrothers ease lovers. You understand? Portuguese it would be amalazer. Amalazer. You understand ease lover? Ease lover means just to make a comfortable situation for ourselves and then to peacefully execute Krishna consciousness without the disturbance of having to think very seriously about the need to save this country. If we think too much about it, it may pop the bubble, so to speak. So better not to think about it too much. Just make a nice situation, do our regular duties, and just don't worry about it too much. But this kind of consciousness is actually dull and ignorant in a sense. It's nice just to be an ease-loving sadhu. Of course, it has its attractive feature for ordinary people, but it's not really what Prabhupada wanted. Prabhupada criticized that his godbrothers were ease lovers. In other words, they would go out and do Sankirtan just enough to pay the bills. And when the bills were paid, Sankirtan was a success. So this kind of Sankirtan, where we just go out to pay the bills, sing for our supper, we go out to pay the bills, we just do enough Sankirtan to pay the bills and come back, and then get into our real business, which is our families and whatever little bad habits we're cultivating. So this kind of consciousness is actually the enemy of Prabhupada's mission. If the whole society just becomes a pious community dedicated, or in other words, the central point cannot be sex. This one wants to marry that one, and that one wants to marry this one, and this and that, and it goes on and on and on. And meanwhile, the whole world is going to hell, and our Sankirtan remains very insignificant. Everyone is just thinking, what do I want? Where do I want to be? How will I be happy? So somehow or other we have to break out of this bodily concept of life. So Jatayu also is beginning a traveling program, isn't it? This is very good. He's going to do a program traveling and preaching. That's also a very important program. And distributing books, isn't it? Distributing books, prasadam, festivals, and so on. Anyway, today is Lord Nityananda's appearance day. It would be a nice day to think very deeply on these things. We cannot simply resign ourselves to mediocrity in our book distribution. So, everyone has to cooperate. Everyone has to cooperate together. Any questions on these points? Yes?
Sometimes we've heard criticism of the approach that some devotees might have in distributing books. They might seem harsh, they might seem to insult the classes, and if it's brought up, then a lot of times it's usually said as well they're distributing the books are going out. So.
No, Prabhupada didn't want that. I have a letter, actually. Again, it's a letter to Kirtananda Swami, emphasizing that no cheating technique should be used to collect money, that we should not do anything which will give the wrong impression to the public. Prabhupada says that first impressions are lasting. Therefore, we should not do anything which will make them think that we're dishonest.
Well, sometimes it's not dishonest, and sometimes it's just very
aggressive. Obviously, Prabhupada stated very clearly he didn't want that. It's not really a subject for debate, because everyone knows that Prabhupada didn't want that. Prabhupada says that first impressions are lasting. Therefore, we should not do anything which will make them think that we're dishonest.
Well, sometimes it's not dishonest, and sometimes it's just very
aggressive. Obviously, Prabhupada stated very clearly he didn't want that. It's not really a subject for debate, because everyone knows that Prabhupada didn't want that. We have to find the ways and means to distribute books nicely. There's one approach. We have Contact Sankirtan program. That's one technique. And even the devotees that go on Sankirtan, they have to find the ways and means to do this. It's not impossible. Panchagoda, people liked you, didn't they, in the airport? He was pretty popular, actually. The point is that we have devotees that can teach these things, but people have to want to learn these things. If we aren't interested in learning these things, then we won't learn.
So then when you have a situation if somebody doesn't want to change, then that the books are going out, but that's their demeanor. Should they still be allowed to continue?
No, you cannot say my demeanor is to be nasty. Devotee has to be nice. Yes?
Charity, on the occasion of Lord Nityananda's appearance day here, I feel prompted to announce that the imminent arrival of the latest fruit of the BBT, Charity Dave's commentary on the 10th canto, volume 7 of the Bhagavad Srimad Bhagavatam, should be available for our blissful distribution any moment.
I thought there would be blissful distribution. That was actually my original intention when I came to Florida. When I was asked to come here, it wasn't my maneuvering. I was invited to come here by the GBC. And I thought it would be very good, because that way I could help to see the Bhagavatam is distributed and continued, and also Prabhupada's books are distributed. That was actually my original intention. Yes.
You were commenting what your observation was, with regard to why the Sankirtan wasn't so nice here, and then you had stated, like those slokas about why, how you were backing that up, and you actually, you quoted nice things and a nice general thought, but I was wondering, what's a practical method of beating those, the lust per se?
Go out.
I mean, that's just...
Go out and do Sankirtan. Yes, you have to go out and do Sankirtan. You have to have a higher taste. You have to have a higher taste. We have to preach. We have to be constantly engaged in preaching. If we're not constantly engaged in preaching, our mind will become the devil's workshop, and we'll think of so many schemes for sense gratification. So many schemes for sense gratification. I want to go to this place, I want to meet this woman, I want to do this, I want to do that. There'll be so many schemes in the mind for sense gratification if we're not seriously engaged in preaching. And then people will start to carry out these schemes, and the whole mission will become bogged down in material arrangements for sense gratification. Yes?
I don't do much book distribution myself, but I like to distribute those little books. But I was thinking it would be nice to distribute some of Prabhupada's little books, like Jan Birth and Death.
Yes, that's also book distribution. We have them. We have them. So you can, that's good news. Yes, we used to do those in Boston. Yes.
You said that if we go out on Sankirtan and just conquer this lust, you see a lot of Sankirtan boys that have been doing Sankirtan for years, they also have this difficulty with the lust.
Well, one may get married. It's not that there'll be no marriage. But even if one gets married, he should continue to preach. Prabhupada spoke about grihastha sannyas. That was actually his intention. Prabhupada wanted the grihasthas to also be sannyasis. In other words, they also, in fact, we hear so much about varnashram, that's all right. You may remember that when Prabhupada introduced the topic of varnashram in 1974, he spoke about a time in the future when there would be great calamities, warfare, there would be no food, and hundreds of thousands of people would come to our farms for shelter, and we would have to organize them in varnashram. He didn't mean that all of his disciples should become sense gratifiers. That's not what the word varnashram means. So, the idea is that Prabhupada wanted his disciples or followers who are householders to also be very strict, austere, and preach. And if we study Prabhupada's activities in India, where he was personally directing things, there came a time when unfortunately, Prabhupada's disciples became a little proud and not so submissive everywhere in the world, because that's a tendency. If one is a big manager, he thinks, well, the Guru has given me this instruction, but he's not so materially practical. I actually am a big manager. I actually know how to do things, so I better do it my way. And when we develop this puffed up attitude, often Krishna will give us enough rope to hang ourselves. Things will appear to go nicely for even 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and in the end there will be a disaster. So, but in India, Prabhupada was personally managing. You were in India, weren't you? Is that right? Weren't you in India? Sometime. Yes, in India, Prabhupada personally kept a tight rein on everything. Because he was the only one who knew how to do anything. And he was preaching there, and he was personally developing things. And so if you study how Prabhupada personally developed things in India, you'll find that the householders who were working with Prabhupada, they were sometimes living in trains, sometimes living here and there, isn't it? Prabhupada was going all over the country. There was no question of suburban living. It was a very strict, austere program. Everyone was traveling, preaching, going here, going there, working hard. So that's how Prabhupada personally arranged things. And while that was going on, at the same time, a different concept of life was being developed somewhere in the Western world, or in different places in the Western world. Like in California, for example, to be honest, a different concept of what Prabhupada really wanted, and the result being that so many problems arose. You had a question?
I just want to comment that in reference to Vijay's question, a lot of times Sankirtan devotees get into difficulty with lust when they start collecting for themselves as opposed to for the temple or for the, for the deities. They develop their own program, they get very independent, and that lust comes from.
Yes, that's also true. Brahmacharya remains pure by remaining very simple. If he becomes sophisticated, then. But the real point is that this philosophy that I'm explaining is not based on the idea that householders are useless. Actually, it's based on the opposite idea. It's based on the idea that it doesn't matter what you are. It doesn't matter if you're a householder or a sannyasi or brahmachari, you have the same basic duties. Sometimes we preach very strongly, some misinformed people think, well, this is just putting down family life. No, it's the opposite. It's saying that no matter what order of life you're in, you have the same responsibility to Prabhupada and to Krishna. It doesn't matter. Just like a sannyasi can't hide behind his saffron and say, well, I'm a sannyasi, I'm just going to stay back today and, in other words, I won't go out to preach, I'm a sannyasi. And the householder can't hide behind his dress. Because everyone can hide behind the poor brahmachari, of course everything's dumped on him. So after a couple of years he figures out, the way things work, and then he just, makes his move to get out of that situation. Yes?
It seems like we've had so many books distributed over so many years. It seems like we should also put some emphasis on actually cultivating those people.
That argument is given. That argument is given. But the point is that we're not even distributing the books. When we used to distribute books, at least there were people to cultivate. The point is that if there's widespread book distribution, also festivals, also prasadam distribution, and so on, developing farm, everything is there. But the point is that the books are the basis. It's just like, for example, in agriculture, you plant a seed. Then the plant grows, you water it, you cultivate it, you clean it, and so on. That's an example of cultivation, isn't it? But if there's no seed, then why talk about cultivation? So my point is that of course, as the books start to go out, we want to have a very nice reception for guests when they come, keep contact with people, just the Vaina's doing that. Of course, we want these things. But it's Sankirtan which gives life to all this. It's Sankirtan which creates the need for these programs. That's the whole point. It's not there. I don't think that 700 points a week is there. I think it's almost nowhere. The problem is it's not there. That's the problem. It's not there. The BBT right now is in a major crisis. They can't. Because no one is sending anything to BBT. Prabhupada wanted us to go out and learn how to distribute books. And he said people want these books. Train up the devotees to preach. So we have to do that. The problem is, according to all objective measurements, the books aren't going out. The books aren't going out. So there's nothing to cultivate. I can cultivate you, or you can cultivate him, or we can cultivate each other because there's no one else around. The books are the basis. When book distribution was going very strongly, Prabhupada was introducing other programs. There was like a desire tree. He introduced, for example, the library program and preaching to professors. And there were big Rath Yatra festivals, and there were schools developing. Everything was there. Everything was developing. It's not that other programs aren't to be done. Everything is there. Festivals, prasadam, schools, farms, academic preaching. to scientists. Everything is there. Programs people's homes, Namahatta program. Everything is there. But the books are the basis. Prabhupada said that's the number one book distribution. The letters are very clear. Because we can say, well, it's not just a question of distributing books now, we should cultivate people. But I'm very simple. I just read what it says in Prabhupada's books, and that's good enough for me. In other words, I use my intelligence to try to understand what Prabhupada said. Prabhupada said books are the most important preaching. He also said we should distribute them in a way so that people are pleased and not disgusted with us. We shouldn't cheat them, or we shouldn't, and so on and so forth. Of course, all these things. And of course, as we distribute books, we want to cultivate the people and encourage them. But the general program of widespread book distribution, that's not going to be replaced. That's not like obsolete or extinct. It's not a dinosaur. In fact, when you have widespread book distribution, that's the best way. It's like, as I say, throwing a wide net. You catch a lot of fish. In other words, when you have massive, like Prabhupada used to say, Prabhupada was so inspired. He said like in war, the bombs are raining down from the sky. So this idea of going out and distributing many, many books, this was Prabhupada's pride and joy. This gave so much pleasure to Prabhupada. So now we say, well, we'll just distribute like a much smaller amount of books, but we'll go in people's homes and teach them how to cook. And I mean, of course we want to do that. Of course we want to do that. Of course we want to keep contact with people, make them devotees and so on. But the program of mass distribution, that's or going out on a wide level, how many times did Prabhupada say, go door to door, house to house? These are Prabhupada's famous words, door to door, house to house. Go everywhere. Prabhupada always said this. That's why your program is also very important. Prabhupada said that, Prabhupada once told me, for preachers and for salesmen, traveling is very good. So it's our practical experience. I remember they made an experiment once in LA. When book distribution was first getting started, they made an experiment where they had devotees that did Sankirtan in the temple, and they sent them out in a van, and they just stayed like 40 miles outside the city. And they found out they did much more Sankirtan. In other words, a combination, of course, we keep our temples, and then devotees sometimes traveling and coming back. This is very good to keep one simple, because on the road you live very simply. Otherwise, we accumulate so many necessities. That's why I also travel. So a few times a year, I have to throw away or give away half my stuff because there's nowhere to put it. So when you travel on the road, you remember how you can actually live very simply. All you need basically is a bag of granola and some buttermilk and a box of books, your bead bag. And you realize how you can actually live very simply, and how you can have so many hours in the day for preaching, and always be coming into contact. I remember doing big programs in laundromats, because we would just, for example, we'd go in the evening. And one time I was in, I think, Syracuse, New York, or somewhere like that, or Albany maybe, and we had to wash our clothes. We went to a laundromat. It was in a college town near the college. A lot of students in the laundromat. So we put our clothes in the laundromat, and I just put down a rug, sat down, and did a Bhagavad Gita class. And all the students came and listened to the class. Right in the lawn. So I mean, when's the last time a dozen college students walked in here? I mean, here we have a building. We're paying so much money, thousands and millions of dollars. Everyone's working, so much work, and yet I just sat down in a laundromat and had more people come to my class in a laundromat. That doesn't mean that the temples are Maya. The temples are also necessary, because we were able to travel. We were able to travel only because the temples were there. It's like, you travel for a while and you come back to the temple. You see the deities and you get spiritual strength. You take nice deity prasadam. And in other words, the temples are the basis. It's just like in a military operation, you have to have a base, a headquarters to move out from. The soldiers can't, they have to have a base where the supplies are coming from and where they go to rest sometimes. So it's like that. It's like a military operation. The base is there, the temple is there, but from that temple we're going out to preach. It's not that temple everyone just becomes sluggish and dull and just sort of, fights their way into the most comfortable corner they can find in the building, settles down, and it's not like that. It's not like that. Like the old Roman Empire, where the Roman citizens became too fat and happy to fight, so they would just pay other people to fight. You know that story? In the old days, the Romans, of course, they were the toughest, and they were conquering everywhere. But as they became rich, as they said, they became very urbanized. Actually, the main symptom of their degradation, just like in America, very urbanized, very urban culture, and living in the cities. And if there was a war or some border dispute, because they had these borders, as you may know. Anyway, I won't go into the whole history, but the border roughly, I think, was coming down the Rhine River and then making like a 90-degree turn into the Danube and down. So everything to the west of that, and then down, of course, into Italy. Anyway, so they had all these borders, and they'd have to maintain it because what they called barbarians. On the other side, they were constantly coming across the border, raiding, stealing, or causing trouble, so they had to maintain all their borders. And it got to the point where they would just pay people, or they just pay the barbarians, or just buy them off, or pay them to fight for them. And they would just, go to their baths, they had the Roman baths and their feasts and this and that, and just pay people to go out and fight. So then what eventually happened is the people they were paying eventually became the leaders of their army. In other words, the generals in the Roman army were actually from the other side of the border, because they'd been. So one day they just said, "Hey, let's just take everything." So they just did it. But what I mean to say is they got to the point where they became too fat and happy to fight. So the temples are meant to be military bases. Otherwise, these actually become important things in our life. What room they're giving me, and she loves me not, he loves me not. And just all these, whatever, I don't even know what these things are, but these become important things in our life. Whereas we can just be free and happy if we just go out and preach. So therefore, this combination, where sometimes the devotees may be here, sometimes they're going out to preach, we have to get back in touch with this very simple way of living, where one can just live very simply. He doesn't need anything. He's very happy. And all of your pleasure is just coming from going out and meeting people and telling them about Krishna. Otherwise, this will not be revolutionary society. We will not change the country. We're just going to merge into our own sloth and ignorance and just end up as just some established, inert, religious society. Yeah.
But many people are following the example of leaders in the sense that...
I'm also a leader. Why not follow my example?
Right, they have to have good facility and real comfort.
Comfort? You try traveling with me all over the world and see how comfortable it is. You came once, so...
Yeah.
Real comfortable.
This is a common thing that people, when they see it, and if they actually have a situation where they're, it's situated, they can actually think more clearly about performing it.
So I don't see these results don't show much clear thinking. No, not so. Again, if we want to be an inert, non-revolutionary, religious society, we can do that. Everyone can just sort of settle into a comfortable niche, and there's no problem with that. It just depends on whether we also are just going to be swept away in this whole, tide of mediocrity and stupidity, which is called, the American 80s. Isn't it? Where the country's become conservative, fat, stupid, dull, uninterested in self-realization. So we're just going to be swept away like that also. We'll also become fat, stupid, and dull. And that's what's happening. That's what's going on around us. That's where the country's at. That's where college students are all young Republicans. The most revolutionary thing they do is to, set off balloons at a Ronald Reagan rally. The point is that the world, especially in America, the world has become, America has become very dull and materialistic. If you read Prabhupada's letters, Harish Chandra, you were revolutionary, don't you see that? If you read Prabhupada's letters, he says that in America, the young people are no longer satisfied with the materialistic way of life. They're revolting against it. They don't want the way of life of their parents. Now, is that true today? Not at all. In other words, what about all these statements Prabhupada made? Now look at the situation. That's all they want. They want a big car, they want a house. In other words, so many statements Prabhupada made. They're not satisfied with the material way of life. They're rejecting it. They don't want this. But now, it's just, what are universities? They're just junior capitalist societies. That's all it is. When you go to a campus, it's just a bunch of junior capitalists walking around, isn't it? Even the professors complain to me. I've had professors at Yale, at the University of Florida, at this school, that they say the students are dull, they're not adventurous, they don't care about anything, all they want to do is get their job. Even the professors, I've had many professors complain to me. Even they're completely burnt out. So the point is that we cannot be affected by this atmosphere. Right now, the world, it's not like in the 60s. Everyone was into yoga and swamis and change your consciousness and making a utopian society. Go out and live in the country. Living in the country nowadays just means that, a suburb, isn't it? It means you just live in the suburbs and you eat natural foods, and that's going back to nature. It means you're a business executive, but you eat natural foods, and you live in the suburbs and plant a fruit tree. That's the back to nature movement. Yes.
I know in Los Angeles to encourage the grihastas to continue with distribution. That if both couples were not free to working full time, they would require rent. And that would encourage both couples to work full time, especially to import distribution. Both couples. Both parties.
That's one technique, yes. All these techniques can be employed. Yes?
So I try to, can preaching and Sankirtan and book distribution really change all this?
Of course. Of course. The point is, we can't just surrender to the American way of life. We can't surrender to the American way of life and just become as dull and stupid as they are. One of the most lamentable things I saw was in 1984 when they had that presidential election, and suddenly a big issue flared up of religion and politics. Do you remember that? Religion and politics. And to what extent is it proper for a politician to be guided by his religious beliefs? To what extent should national laws be shaped by moral standards which derive from religion and so on? And of course, the most lamentable, pathetic thing about the discussion is that no one even asked what we thought about it. And I realize we have achieved finally the last word in irrelevance. We have finally achieved total irrelevance. We were totally irrelevant. Here they are discussing religion. They're discussing religion and how it should shape American society, and to what extent should a society be guided by religion. In other words, that's like our bread and butter, or chapati and butter. And in the middle of that whole discussion, they never even asked any of us what we thought. We were totally irrelevant. This was the result of cleaning up our act. We cleaned ourselves right out of the ballpark. So that's the other extreme. We were totally irrelevant. No one even thought to ask us what we thought. No one cared what we thought, because we were the former Hare Krishna movement. One leader of another so-called spiritual group in London said to the devotees, I thought you people used to have a big movement, didn't you? We used to have a big movement. So therefore I say the enemy is sex. Because whether one is, even if it is a sannyasi or a brahmachari or a householder, when one becomes attached to sex pleasure, subtle or gross, he loses his revolutionary fervor. And he starts to think in terms of security. Security. This becomes the magic word, the International Society for Security. This is a shameless situation. Imagine a movement in which Prabhupada personally explained to us, don't worry about money, just go out and preach, Krishna will protect you, my devotee never vanquishes, and still the main thing is security. In other words, a society where everyone loses their faith in God. Everyone becomes a coward, people become timid, and instead of actually trusting Krishna, no, but I know a devotee that did Sankirtan and then he was sick and no one paid his medical bill. In other words, we don't believe that Krishna will maintain us. We don't believe that Krishna will maintain us. So, you have a society in which everyone is basically out for himself. Everyone is thinking of his own so-called security. Everyone, even the brahmacharis have their own little bank accounts. And then out of all that, you try to scrape up a little bit of preaching just to make sure the lights don't go off. Get the Sankirtan party out, because otherwise we're going to turn the lights off today. So I don't see any serious possibility of making a spiritual revolution with this type of consciousness. I don't think that, of course, if one is attached to women and if one is attached to family life, he's not really concerned very much with revolution, because, as we know, if one is trying to simply cultivate family enjoyment, the last thing in the world we're interested in is revolutions. You know that from your political experience, isn't it? Isn't that true even among the karmis? As soon as one becomes situated, the last thing in the world he wants to hear about is revolution, isn't it?